This is a video to help teachers write tiered questions within a science framework and a focus on UDL. So hopefully some of you know me by now. I've done a lot of work with working on going further for students who need more challenge within a heterogeneous classroom. That's still my focus, but today I'm also going to show you how you can write tiered questions for students who need more support as well. And I want to show you essentially how, I don't want to say it's just easy, right? And everybody should do it, but I do want to show you how you can make it pretty easy so that it doesn't feel like you're reinventing the wheel all the time. Hopefully this slide is familiar to you, although if you're new to the district, it may not be. This is a PowerPoint that shows how you can differentiate specifically for going further to give students in science different opportunities. It's specifically targeted towards middle school curriculum, but really these ideas can be used in elementary or in high school across the board. Just the examples you see all come from the middle school curriculum. So right here in the lesson level strategies, we're going to be looking at like this idea of tiered assignments. And we're going to be looking specifically today at tiered questions. So I took an example from the 7th grade curriculum. The unit is population and resources. And I'm going to focus specifically on this lesson 2.3, births changing in a population. So if you're not familiar with this unit, essentially in chapter 1, the main idea students got is that if births in a population exceed deaths, then the population will increase. If deaths exceed births, then the population will decrease. And this is one of those units where some of the kids are going to pick this up really, really quickly and need help moving further. And some kids are going to need more structure. So depending on what the Amplify unit is, sometimes you need a little more on one side versus the other. But this is definitely one where you're going to see a lot of kids who pick up these concepts really quickly and want more. So while I'm focusing on this lesson 2.3, I want you to also notice that this lesson 2.4 is deaths changing in a population. And that's going to be really important because when I'm looking at tiered questions, I'm going to be tiering my questions so that those students who are picking up these concepts faster actually cover lessons 2.3 and 2.4 in one lesson, and then are able to move on to something different for lesson 2.4 while the rest of the class does lesson 2.4. And I'll show you how that's going to work a little later. So first, just to give you a grounding in what lesson 2.3 is, students are designing an experiment in the sim to increase the number of wee bugs. So these are these little wee bugs in a population. And the idea in this is that they're specifically changing the number of green leaves in the population in order to increase the number of wee bugs. So there's obviously different ways to increase wee bugs, but in Amplify for this lesson, they specifically want students looking at how would you change the green leaves in order to increase the wee bug population. If you go through the lesson, what you essentially have to do is increase the number of green leaves, and then you lock that. So again, those teachers who are familiar with this lesson, you're probably like, oh yeah, I've got that, right? So I increased the number of green leaves to 200. I then locked it. I ran my sim for a certain amount of time. And as you can see, here were the populations before I increased the number of green leaves and locked it. And then here is, from about year 23 onward, after, or time unit 23, whatever you want to call it, onward, you can see, wow, I'm very good at this because I locked the green leaves at 200 and whoa, look at those wee bugs increase, right? So again, there are some kids who are going to take a little more time with this. There's some kids who are going to need this broken down, but then there are some kids who are going to go, yeah, I increased the green leaves and the wee bugs ate more green leaves, and so they reproduced more. And they've got that. So after they've done this, I then want to give them some analysis questions. These are my 8 analysis questions. And from 1 to 8, they are increasing in complexity. And the way I would assign this is that my standard level is going to do 1 through 5. And then my going further level is going to do 4 through 8. So a really big key here is that going further is not doing all 8. So it's not, okay, you've done the standard level, now do more. It's, you don't even really need 1 through 3 here. You can jump in and start right at 4. And so if you notice, 1 through 4 are really structuring out what was your strategy to increase the wee bugs? How did changing the green leaf population affect the number of energy storage molecules? How did changing the green leaf population affect the number of births? So I'm structuring it to get students to number 4, where now they're providing a larger explanation. Where did I get questions 1 through 4? I took them pretty much word for word from Amplify. So I don't have to worry about coming up with all of this. The only thing I did was on 2 and 3, I added that I want students to give evidence to support their answer. So I want some numbers based on their data. Amplify doesn't ask for that. But then my students who are able to understand this pretty quickly, they can jump right in at number 4 and look at overall how and why changing the green leaf population affected the wee bug population. And then they can move on and start with lesson 2.4. So how would they set it up in the sim if they wanted to decrease the number of births? Okay, that's number, oh, I'm sorry. No, I made a mistake. Number 5 actually is still part of what Amplify has, and it's now predict how you would decrease the number of births. Sorry, lesson 2.3 is all about number of births. But then 6, explain a strategy to decrease the number of deaths. So now let's look at number of deaths. They're going to have to do that by using whatever the thing that eats the wee bugs are called. I'm actually not a 7th grade teacher, so I don't know what those things are called, but whatever they're called, if we go back here, we can find out. Those are called furbles, right? They're going to want to increase the number of furbles or decrease the number of furbles in order to decrease the number of deaths in the wee bugs. So again, some kids are going to be like, I've got that. Let me put it in the sim. Let me test that out. And now I can explain it. And now those students can move on to something different on the next day when the rest of the students are struggling with that idea of, okay, now how are we going to decrease number of deaths or increase number of deaths, depending on where you want to go with that. And just off the top of my head, I might suggest the next day, those students then do something like looking at wolves in Yellowstone. So you're introducing a human element where by 1920, humans had hunted all the wolves in Yellowstone to extinction, and how that changed the ecosystem in Yellowstone. At this point, students have already looked at a food web, and it's really easy to find food webs of Yellowstone. And then in about 1986, 1996, you'd have to look up the date, we realized we had really screwed up the ecosystem, so we reintroduced wolves. So getting at that idea of how do humans then make these changes in order to stabilize ecosystems after they've made changes that destabilize the ecosystem. And that can be a one-day thing. And if you're truly interested in that, I would then throw in a great 5-minute video for these kids who are going further called How Wolves Change Rivers. And it will just blow their minds. If I have students who need more structure than the standard questions, I would take the standard questions and I would give them sentence starters, or I would even give them something like this, where 1, 2, and 3, they're just filling in blanks. And then 4, they're still doing all of that explaining. And you will notice I did take out 5 here for kids who need more structure. Now, one thing about UDL is that you give all the kids all the options and they choose what they want and what they need. However, I think the reality is sometimes middle school students need a little help choosing. So these questions I would only give to my students who I know need that increased structure. That said, you can certainly give all three choices. So these are two choices here, plus this to all the students. And then one of the things I've done is a student who chooses something like this when they don't really need it, they finish very quickly and then they're playing Snake on their computer. So I go by and I say, oh, great, you finished that. Let's now go back and do 5 through 8. And they say, oh, but you said I could choose. Right, but I can tell that you weren't really challenged. And part of what I'm helping you do is find the right challenge. So hopefully you can see how you would get these questions set up in a way that doesn't take too long. Remember, 1 through 5 actually were all from Amplify. So then 6 through 8, all I did was take what the next activity was, thinking ahead that some kids would be able to get there really quickly. And essentially 6 and 7, tell them what to do, which is what they would do in 3.3. And then 8 is a repeat of number 4, but with the deaths. And then here, all I did here was take out some words and make it statements and then add in number 4. So hopefully that's really helpful to show how you could make tiered questions with the same sim activity for all students. You're welcome to reach out to me. And if you have questions and ask, and I'm happy to help you structure anything you need to structure.